Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
I'm Outie Tom.
We are Team Binge. We are here to talk about Severance, Season 2, Episode 2. This one is called Goodbye, Mrs. Selvig. Miss Selvig or Mrs. Selvig, Tom?
I think she's Mrs. Selvig as the Outie, and then, well, I don't know. She's not necessarily an Outie in an innie because she doesn't have the severance procedure. So, but yes, I guess she's married in this world.
I thought she was a widow. Once you're a widow, do you revert back to Mrs. or
No
Mr.?
way of knowing.
There's no way of knowing. We are here to talk about a fun little episode. I liked what they did here, Tom. I feel like that first episode was like, hey, we're getting the band back together. And it didn't take us to the exact spot we left at the end of season one. This one kind of gave us some, we'll call it, I don't know, putty to fill in the gaps between season one and season two. And so I liked what they did here. Very character driven. And as I've mentioned before, I'm invested in these characters. Did you like this episode, Tom?
Yeah, I thought it was fun. Where we get the first episode is more about the innies and how they reacted. Now we're getting all the outies and how everybody is reacting to what happened. And I think we get quite a few answers already in terms of like timelines and what was kind of said to Mark specifically from like Milchek about what's going on. And I loved finally getting a little bit more of Helena. Like now we're kind of seeing who she is, like more of the mastermind and CEO of this company. I found that pretty fascinating as well.
Sure, sure. And so I think it's going to be a little bit tough calling her Helena or Helly, but we'll work through it. These are the struggles that modern man has to deal with. Tom, as I was making notes for this, I kind of thought, okay, there's a ton of mystery in this show, and there's like a lot of, I'm sure the internet is spending a lot of time looking into details. It seems like a very careful show, very detailed show where things mean things. Words mean things in a way. I found myself as I like thought of each character and how they like the driving mystery here. Do you feel like it's Gemma and Miss Chase and like whether or not she's alive, whether or not she's dead, like, or do you feel like the driving mystery for you is more like Lumen and what Cold Harbor is and what they're doing down there? I guess it can be both, but in your heart of hearts, Tom, what are you more interested in?
I think I'm more interested in the overarching understanding of what the heck Lumen is in Kier and like the backstory of this company, less so about like Gemma. I think Gemma's obviously a big puzzle piece to that, and it's certainly the driving force for all of our characters. But I think me as like a viewer and watcher, I'm more fascinated about all of like the intricacy and the world building that they've done. Because I think this episode even has some like just wild stuff. Like at a certain point, they go into the parking lot when Mark eventually goes back to the office, and like every car seems like it's made in like the 1980s. It's just like, why? Like these weird little pieces that I just can't wrap my brain around that I find wildly fascinating.
Okay. First off, I'm offended. I'm pretty sure he's in like a 91 Volvo, which is almost the exact same, different color as my first car, Tom, which was a hand-me-down of a hand-me-down of a hand-me-down, not to date myself. So I am bothered that you don't think all the cars in the parking lot are sweet, because I was pretty rad driving around with my Discman hooked up to a cassette player, put through the cassette player. Because the
Was it
five
a beige Volvo?
yeah, it was gold, my friend. It was gold.
okay.
It was probably beige, but I referred to it as gold. Okay, so I like that. That's where your head's at. I'm finding myself more drawn to like not the murder mystery of it all because I don't know what's going on, but Mark being kind of the main character. I'm very interested in how they brought his wife either back to life, and we get some stuff where he talks about IDing her body that she really did die in the real world. So that to me, once again, I just hope they know what they're doing and this isn't a bunch of gobbledygook. But these are the risks we take when we watch 20 hours of a television. So the other thing I wanted to mention, and to your point, the reveals that are made, timeline. So in the episode that began this season, they mentioned with the innies that it's been 5 months, and I feel like they correct that in this episode, right?
Yeah, because it seems like Mark is contemplating whether going back to work like over the weekend and gets convinced by Milkshake to come back. And when he's there, like Mark W leaves and you can hear him clearly telling the other guys like, oh, they brought me back for only 3 days. So I would venture a guess it's only maybe been a week and not 5 months. But I think that kind of goes in line with what I had thought in the first episode where they attempted to do this reset. It did not work. They realized they had to pivot and quickly pivoted to this new setup.
Sure. I do want to point out he was also upset that he had to break a lease in Grand Rapids. So that's not the only thing. And Mark W's Audi seems like a real peach, by the way. Unfriendly. The other thing I wanted to mention about this specific episode, and I don't know if I've just kind of, I don't know, my brain just shuts down to these things, but the like corporate buzzwords that the management uses when they're dealing with a question they don't want to answer, or they're dealing with someone's Audi in this episode, I know it's part of the show and there's a satire to like corporate America that is happening here, but I could not help all the time someone was asked like a serious question, or like when Miss Cobell is talking with Helena, and Helena's all her answers are just like initiative, buzzword, like corporate synergy. I don't know. I was like, all right, maybe I haven't been paying attention, or maybe I've severed that part of my brain that cares about those buzzwords.
Well, it's always fun to see like Helena because she's like seemingly very cold and calculated in her responses that it's kind of terrifying.
It is. She's wonderful, by the way. There are some shots and we'll go into it, but I find her character extremely compelling. But the driving force of this episode was, in my mind, Milkshake, or Milchek, as you call him. I believe we find out his first name is Seth. Wonderful first name. Because he's essentially given the task of bringing the band back together, or figuring out what happened when they did the overtime contingency to, I guess, keep the explosion from spreading. And so we spend time with him on his rad motorcycle. Did you think Milchek was a motorcycle guy?
Oh, man. Once he put on that helmet, I was like, yeah, this dude's awesome.
Yeah, I thought he was going to fight the Power Rangers or something, you know? But so he's got to go around, and this is directed by Helena, and so Helena's bought into this like religious cult too, right? I guess she's part of the family, so she's got to be.
Yeah, she even tells him, like, Milkshake is looking for a direction here. And she's like, make here guide your hand. So both of them, I think, are very much drank the Kool-Aid here. And they are, I guess, letting their subconscious in their readings of Kier to tell him what to do here.
Okay. So that's how you're interpreting Kier. All right. Interesting.
I don't know how you interpreting him.
Oh, I have no idea. I don't believe in him. So there's only one true God, Tom, and his name is capitalism. All right. They do have a quick discussion where he's like, should I fire them? And we had a conversation in our house about what firing means. And I'd like to pose this to you. If you've been severed and you get fired, there's not like a medical or an issue with being severed but never going to the place where you're severed, right? You would be able to live your life, supposedly. I know the science is new, but so you would be able to live your life normally if you were fired, right? There's not like an adverse effect. There would just be a hole in your memory.
I guess so. I mean, we had that character in the first season that played Mark's friend that eventually, I don't know if he got fired or if he left, but it seemed to have ill effects on him in the long
his
run.
Ill effects were because he tried to reverse it. My question is, if you don't try and reverse it, if you just live with that chip in your head, can you go work at Great Doors and be fine,
I don't think you can. I mean, seeing this like overtime protocol or whatever they did to be able to have the innie just like take over their life. I mean, theoretically that button still exists. Like, I would imagine they have the technology to then turn off like the chip so that wouldn't happen anymore, but it doesn't seem like that's the case.
I thought, so with Milchek visiting everyone in the beginning, I thought it was interesting. So he when he talks to Dylan and Irv, he fires them or lets them go, and they both fight for it. And so I'm interested in the character motivation as to why they fight for it, and also why he decided to fire those two, because he doesn't with Mark. Mark, he's actively trying to keep on. Did you have any, like, Irv and Dylan, is this just a job they need financially, or was it something deeper? Are they kind of like Mark, they need to be severed? Like is there an emotional attachment to it? Did you get that sense?
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't want to jump too far ahead, but it seems like Mark S. is the catalyst. Like, he's kind of the leader, or they need him for something specific, and bringing back these other people are more for, I guess, using Mark in the long run. So I don't know if they felt like they needed them as much. But these guys as characters, like Irv now being able to have his, like, any kind of come and see Bert and everything else, like, I think he still very much wants to figure out and solve this mystery. So when he gets fired, he is upset. Dylan is interesting because he just recently found out he has a family, and we haven't seen much of him in the outer world here. So this is kind of the first time we're getting some of his thoughts and motivation.
Sure. I guess I'm thinking more about their outies in terms of their reactions, because their outie is limited in knowledge on what's on the inside. This is like a timey-wimey show, Tom. It's just very confusing as to which version we are talking about. The last thing I want to mention about Milchek is just people should normalize not letting Milchek in their house, because he's not bringing good news. When your boss shows up at your house in the middle of the night, I don't think you're obligated to let them in. It's like vampires. If you don't invite them in, they won't come into your home.
I was just about to ask. I think he did ask if he could kind of come in, and he got the okay to go over the threshold. So he might be a vampire.
Is this a vampire show? Did they Trojan horse us a vampire show? That would be incredible. I'm excited.
Yeah.
I love True Blood. I am a vampire, Sookie. Anyways, Helena, one of the more interesting characters in this show as it's developing. This episode starts, we get a quick shot of her, like, coming down from her outburst at the gala. She obviously realizes what her innie did. And we get her sweet haircutted dad showing up in, I'm assuming, the women's bathroom to call her a fepid moppet, which we're a podcast for children and we keep it clean. I don't know if that's vulgar or not, if I'm being honest.
I had to look it up. I think fetid essentially just means heavily offensive smell, and moppet is a child. So I guess just calling her a smelly kid. I don't know, but it was very jarring where he just does that and then leaves the room.
Based on his haircut, the cars in the parking lot, and his choice of insults, is he like 400 years old?
He's a vampire.
What's this guy's deal? Oh man, he reminds me of the character in Parks and Rec that's like the rich sponsor, and he's like, I cut my own hair. This guy's a mean one. I did not appreciate him treating our sweet Helena Helly this way, but we have Helena not being forced. I'm assuming this is of her own volition since she's running things. She does a classic celebrity move. She's like, I mixed pills and booze and I made some terrible choices. And also my Twitter was hacked. That's what she was. That's the video she recorded. So we knew this wasn't truly an innie outburst.
Nice, well done. Yeah, I mean, essentially we're just going through the cover-up mode, and she even mentions like it was a friendly crowd where it was more like inside people. It wasn't like a whole bunch of press there, so I think this was relatively easy for them to kind of squench.
Sure, Squench, our sponsor, Squench, lemon lime Squench. When you're kind of thirsty but you don't want to drink anything with nutritional value, grab a Squench, lemon lime. Also now in Severance. Okay. The most interesting part, she mentions something later that we'll touch on, but the most interesting part I thought was Helena watching her innie and Mark interact and flirt. She even laughs, and then she sees the kiss, and she rewinds and watches the kiss over and over and over again. I thought it was a little bit intrusive, but that is what it is.
Well, it's technically her, but she seems so reminded about the line. I can't remember exactly what it is. It's like, if, in case I see you out there or see you back in here or something like that. And I was kind of wondering, she seemed certainly struck by it, right? Rewinding it twice. Do you think she's trying to use this as an advantage, or like, what's your take?
Tom, you're such a your lack of romanticism, or I don't even know how to say that. I think she and Mark are falling for each other, and she sees that, and she's stricken by it. I don't think this is a cold-hearted business move. I think deep down, Helen is a lovely person, and she wants her inner to be to be happy and in love with Mark. That's what I think, Tom.
Okay. I mean, that sounds nice.
I don't like your cynicism. I don't like your cynicism. You know what Teddy Roosevelt said about people that live cynical lives, Tom? I know you do. Because I recently sent you Man in the Arena. Anyways, all right. So, look it up, folks. It's on YouTube.
Flex your business with an American Express Business Gold Card. You'll earn 4 times membership rewards points on your top 2 eligible spending categories, like transit and electronics, each month, on up to $150K in combined purchases per year. Plus, you can now earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at AmericanExpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold, built for business by American Express.
Your neighborhood just got cooler with Kroger Delivery's refrigerated trucks. Simply order groceries at the same great prices online as in-store, and we'll bring them to you fresh every time. And if that wasn't cool enough, you can now earn 4 times the fuel points after 4 with your digital coupon. Choose a next-day Kroger Delivery time slot for 4 p.m. or later on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Must deliver by February 4th. Restrictions apply. See Kroger.com for details.
I know we touched on it before, but there is something in the way that this show is shot. And in the first episode of this season, all office, right? It's all white. It's all illuminated in that weird office way. This one mostly or completely takes place outside of the office. And we get these shots of Helena walking in her gown, like down long hallways in that conference room. There's that shot where she's leaning against the table and Milchek comes in his motorcycle. I thought all of this was like super cool, very slick, and different than other like episodes have been. So I'm not a film nerd that can tell you what's different about it, but I know it jumped out to me and the visuals were quite cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. And to your point about like the contrast between the cold, dark or white halls of the office, like in the basement of the underground building, and then like all these nighttime shots of everybody here, super cool. And as always, the show is filmed incredibly well.
There's also like a level of loneliness that comes with watching a single person, Helena, walk down like a hallway and like be standing in an empty conference room and just like handling this crisis on her own. I don't know. I thought it was extremely well shot.
Just the environment too, right? Like it's nighttime, it's winter, it's constantly snowing. Like it just seems very dark and ominous. They set the tone very well.
There's vampires on motorcycles, just like Blade. Is Milchek Blade? Is that what's happening? Oh man,
pretty cool.
People keep trying to ice skate uphill. I believe is the line that I just butchered. Look it up, kids. It's on YouTube. All right. Anyways, in the crisis kind of suite that is happening with Lumen and Helena, we are introduced to, we'll talk about him later, this gentleman who seems to be some sort of head of security. And in their conversations, they bring up kind of backfilling Mark S's team since they fired Irv and Dylan, and obviously Helly's not coming back. And I thought it was interesting that where they found the replacements that we saw in that first episode is like 2 of them were from a layoff, and they mentioned 5X. So I'm assuming 5X is another division of Lumen?
Yeah, I don't know what. Like, I feel like they did that.
Tom,
and
you
then
read
very
the book. Tell me. I'm used to podcasting with you, and you've read the book, so just tell me the answers, Tom. What was 5X?
Oh, goodness. I wish I knew. But, I mean, we are getting a lot more. I mean, we got like, what was the other department that Bert came from? Was it O&D?
Yes.
Something like that.
Optics
so,
and delusion.
Yeah. Like, we're just getting more of the company where it's just kind of expanding and opening. Now that we know that they're in multiple countries and there are multiple divisions, I'm fascinated, like I talked at the beginning, about what is this company? What do they do? What are these different divisions? And then quickly after that, they mentioned this idea of like, we need Mark S to finish Cold Harbor. And then boom, like just seemingly huge reveal. Like, okay, well, what does this mean? Like, what is Mark? How is he the key to finishing this project, I guess?
And we've seen Cold Harbor on the computer screen when they're doing the number things, right? And there's like a percentage. I believe we've seen that shot.
I think it's on the like napkin or the back of the picture, like the map that the friend makes. I think there's like a little column there or a corridor that says to Cold Harbor or something. So I don't think it's on any screens that we've seen. I think it's just on that map that guy drew for him.
And of course, when I hear the term Cold Harbor, Tom, you know exactly where my mind goes.
I wish I did. Go for it.
Oh, the famous Civil War battle, Cold Harbor, Tom. Obviously, that's... Okay, never mind. We're not on the same page. Let's not yes-and each other about our Civil War history knowledge. Speaking of people that aren't yes-anding, we get a nice flashback of that moment, not nice, but where Mark is screaming into the speaker to talk to the board. And we see that act of desperation being the thing that brings back Irv, Dylan, and Helly, which I thought was interesting.
And we have a bunch of shots here, and I'll just talk about it in this section. We're talking about Helly, of them kind of all returning, them putting their stuff in the locker, and then going back down into the office. And what's your take here? Do you feel like we still kind of have like an undercover boss situation with Helena? Or do you think when Helena goes down, she is turning back into full Helly?
No, I think she's severed, and I think that's Helly.
Okay.
That was your theory, Tom. I like that you're trying to push it off on me. I never thought she was an undercover boss. I've always thought Helly in the office is the Helly that we know and love, and that Helena out of the office is the Helena we know and love that walks down hallways in ball gowns. So,
okay.
Oh, I love your smug. I love when you think you're going to be right later on. It's so good. All right, let's touch real quick on Harmony Selvig and Cobell. I'm going to refer to her as Cobell because all hail Cobell from Battlestar Galactica. Look it up, kids. It's on YouTube. So she is in the conference room, and I believe she is being talked to and being apologized to because she saved the day by warning them that the 3 were in overtime contingency. And so that allowed Milchek to go shut Dylan down. And this leads to the most, I don't know, whenever you have to ask for an apology and the person says, I apologize, I don't think you take that apology at face value, which, to Cobell's credit, she does not, because she seems to be completely done with Lumen by the end of this episode.
Yeah, like her line initially is like, I deserve an apology. She gets that cold apology, and she's like, I welcome your attrition, or your contrition. Like, great.
Yes, this is not how normal people talk. I just want to point that out. And despite a promotion, she's like, no, I don't want that. I want to continue to run the Severance floor because they try to, and this is where I thought about all like the corporate buzzwords. They're like, we're going to make you in charge of the Severance Advisory Council. It's a new initiative. You're going to spearhead it. And she doesn't take the promotion.
What's your thought here? Is this just them trying to keep her close and not do anything? Because I still feel like I'm very confused about Miss Cobell, like where she is seemingly devout to Kier in this whole organization, but also might potentially have other motives, and maybe she's, using this to try to get back at Lumen somehow. I don't know.
I think, Tom, sometimes we believe in institutions that give our lives meaning so much, and then when those institutions fail us, we snap and we want to burn them down. And so I think she was not severed. I think she was a true believer. And now that she's seen how quickly they will abandon her and all that she's given them, I don't think any amount of promotion. I don't even think if they gave her the Severance floor back, whether or not she would be running it in the same way she used to run it now that she's seen what's behind the curtain. So
Yeah, I think that's fair.
I think this relationship is broken and she is ready to scream at people and almost run them over on the snowy streets of Kier. And so, yeah, that's what I came away. I could be wrong.
Yeah, and the only reason I kind of call that out is I think when they do show her like on that Kier shrine or whatever in some of her flashbacks, or not necessarily flashbacks, but didn't she like lose her mom, and like there was stuff on that maybe showed like a breathing tube or something like that, and maybe she's blaming Lumen for the loss of her mom, and maybe that's why she's particularly trying to get back at her. That's just something I've seen in kind of like some internet videos and people kind of thinking that she might have ulterior motives, which I thought would be kind of interesting for her as a character.
I think people react poorly when they're fired, and I think that is her main reasoning. But
Okay.
I had forgotten all of that shrine and the breathing tube, and yeah, clearly there was a family member that was sick. So let's talk about our main guy, Mark, because he is the locomotive's engine. As they say, the wheels that drive the train, you know? That's a saying, right, Tom? The wheels have all the power in them for trains. Anyways, let's get out of that analogy as quickly as possible. My children will be embarrassed when they hear it. Okay.
I'm embarrassed.
Yeah, that's fine. You're stuck with me, buddy. Good luck. So we come into Mark's story where he is just like snapped back in. He's at the book reading. He's holding on to the wedding photo, and my guy Rickon's back. And Tom, I know I said Mark was the wheels of the train, but Rickon is the wheels, the engine, the steam, the coal, the conductor, the track itself. Everything about Rickon I love. I laugh at everything that comes out of this guy's mouth. His like conjectures, the weird things that he says, how he says people's names. It's just so great. And that character, I think if you're an actor and you get a character like that, you're just like, this is all I want to do. I get to be like an obnoxious, too good for everyone, and like life guru. I don't know. I love Rick.
I think at a certain point, it doesn't even like mention his book and like talking about, oh yeah, and how much you guys love that book while you're in there. Like he had to just kind of call it out again. It was great.
Yeah, he kept mentioning, he's like, oh, you're in, he really loved my book. And Mark, the Audi, is baffled by this. And there's a cut in the beginning where he's like, we'll reschedule the book reading. I just need to decide whether or not I'm going to start from the beginning or where I left off, which is just so, I love Rickon. I love him so much. He gives me great joy. The big discussion that happens here is hearing Mark say she's alive, and this sister glomming on is a poor choice of words, that he didn't mean the baby, which they found, but she reads into, because she knows, I guess, her brother so well, that he meant Gemma or Miss Casey, right?
I was a little confused by this, and maybe they could have given us a little bit more in the
there was a bit of a
on.
There was a bit of a TV leap that happened, yes, but yeah we got there.
Yeah, because I just didn't really understand when they're saying like she's alive, and he kept talking about the baby. So yeah, I get it now after thinking about it a bit, but it would have been helpful to have a little bit more here.
Sure. The vampire arrives at their house once again. Rickon, don't let him in. He has to ask permission. Don't let him in. I thought it was funny that Rickon and I'm forgetting the sister's name sat in.
I think it's Devin.
Okay,
Or Devon,
they sit on this clearly company meeting, and we get some details here that I thought were interesting. They were out and in the world for 39 minutes. A lot to accomplish in 39 minutes. You could watch 39 minutes of a movie. You could watch 39 minutes of a TV show. You could watch 39 minutes of a second movie if you didn't like the first one. Well, it'd probably be like 38 minutes of the second one. Anyways, a lot going on there. I loved when the sister was like, "Oh, did you know you've hired someone who is a lactation fraud?" It took me a couple of seconds to understand what was happening, but I enjoyed the line.
That was great. I forgot that was like Miss Scobell's like cover, essentially. It was great.
And the way Milchek talks in this moment, he goes, "I can assure you she will never, oh man." I love in this moment how Milchek says to them, "She will never."
Now you got to keep it.
I love how in this moment, Milchek says, "She will not bedevil you again."
It's a great line.
It's a great line. Made me think, do we not use bedevil enough? Do we need to use bedevil more? Do we need to talk about bedevil? No, bedevil. Oh, in case we cut this out, it took me 6 tries to get that line out because bedevil is such a tough one.
It bedeviled you, yeah.
Good. Oh, way to show off that you can get it in one. Nice, Tom. You're a terrible partner. We have the diner scene with Devin and Mark is at this point contemplating quitting. Mm-hmm. He does say to Milchek as he leaves the house, Milchek's like, "We'll see you on Monday." And he's like, "I don't know," which is such a casual way to quit a job. Like, I don't know if I'm going to show up. Mm-hmm. And he's not a millennial, so that's a little bit surprising. But Mark, in this conversation where he is upset with his sister because she has kept bringing up who he meant when he said she was alive, and she thinks he meant Gemma, Mark reveals that he ID'd Gemma's body and that I believe she burned alive? Is this... I believe that is a detail he mentioned because he says if this happened to Rickon and Rickon burnt up, I would be sad for you but not affected. And then he storms out with the righteous anger that I think is deserved, but also his sister loves him, so maybe communicate a little bit more. Am I right on that, Tom? So we have a body identified and a very tragic ending?
Yeah, I don't know what to take from this is because we obviously know that Gemma is alive in some form or fashion, but like, is this the original Gemma? Is it a clone of Gemma? Are they using her consciousness and re-putting it in a body? Because clearly if he found a body and it was burned, the Gemma or Miss, what is her name? Miss Chase? Mm-hmm. Like, clearly is not a burnt body that doesn't seem to have any recollection of Mark. So just continues to add to the wild mystery of it all.
Sure. I want to mention that every time a show is shot in a diner, I think to myself, man, I love diners. I would love to go have a cup of coffee at a diner right this moment. This diner has the opposite effect on me. This is like the least cozy and warm diner anyone's ever gone to, and that is accentuated by the security guy with the tattoo on his hand that they zoom in on. And I believe it says Frolic?
Yeah, and this goes back to, I think we had mentioned this in the last pod, and I don't know all the deep dives that the internet has done, but they talk about like one of the paintings, it's like the 4 tempers of Kier, of woe, frolic, dread, and malice. So I don't know if this is like the personification of Frolic, and then potentially like of those 4 tempers, that's how they are taking these numbers and macro data refinement and like bucketizing them in these 4 tempers. So again, a lot to it. There was even a poster in the last episode, I think when they were in the break room, that said something about Frolic as well. So it's littered everywhere, but I don't really know what to make of it.
That's fair, Tom, and I appreciate your innocent mind. You not understanding prison culture don't understand prison tattoos. This clearly lets you know that this gentleman's been to prison, and he was part of the Hot Cops prison gang that Tobias ran in Arrested Development. Okay. He's a child of Dorothy, I believe. So that's just, they frolic everywhere, and that's why they get it. They're murder hands, the ones that they murder with. That's what a murder hand is, Tom. you get Frolic tattooed on it. So you're welcome.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Hey, Atlanta. Say hello to Small Business Help from Apple. That's right. We're here to make starting and running your business simpler. From helping you choose the right devices to setting them up hassle-free, we can help you build your business in no time. Speak to a business expert and get the help you need at no cost whatsoever. At Apple, we're open for your small business. Go to apple.com/smallbusiness or visit an Apple store to learn more.
Talk to me about, Tom, how many times in your life have you had a fruit basket delivered to you?
Oh, not enough. Let's say that. And this seemed like a very wonderful fruit basket. It didn't even seem like a basket, more of a nest. It was like a nest of fruit.
Yes, like a pineapple bird came and laid its pineapple egg. Yes, Tom, that's right. It was a nest. What a weird comment. A basket is like a nest, Tom. They're woven, I don't know, branches?
No, baskets have handles. This did not have a handle. That is a definition of a basket.
Okay. This is also how I know you weren't in the Frolic prison gang, because you know the difference between a fruit basket and a nest. All right. Let's talk about the Milchek salesman. This guy goes to Mark and has to convince Mark, who is clearly having some reservations, to come back. And he hits him with just a ton of good stuff. And I very much appreciate Milchek as a character. I think this actor is phenomenal. And
really good.
I don't know. This was a very revealing conversation, and he touches some buttons for Mark that ultimately work.
He throws enough at him, right? Like the first one is like, hey, we'll give you a 20% bonus. I think is the second one we're going to do like some sort of internal or independent review or something like that. But I think the biggest reveal is the idea of like Gemma and, hey, do you remember why you went and did Severance in the first place? It's because of the loss of your wife and how miserable you are. And then tells him very pointedly, like, hey, your innie has found love inside this office. And like, if your innie can find solace, then it can come to you. You just have to give it time. And I think that was enough to ultimately sway Mark here.
Oh, and it's a fascinating idea. It's like, okay, if that part of me finds happiness and like can separate itself from this terrible grief I'm going to, and Milchek saying that will eventually like work its way to you, is a fascinating idea just in terms of the human psyche. Mm-hmm. And then the other piece to this, and maybe I'm just heartless, but the driving factor of Mark wanting to be severed during the day so that he is not crying in his car while he's thinking about the love of his life. And so it makes it more, because I will be honest, him returning in this season to being an innie and being severed, I was like, why would you? If you knew everything, if you had the secrets, then why would you return? And you understand more just what level of grief he's been going through and why he's trying to. And, you know, we all do it with different things in this TV show. It's this made-up thing called Severance, but in our own lives, we constantly use things to try and separate us from what makes us unhappy. Me, it's squench. I love a good squench. Whenever I think about all the people in my lives that die, I reach for a squench. And you know what, Tom? I don't feel better, and it doesn't help, but I'm hydrated, you know? And I've got 67 grams of sugar in me.
Great product placement. Squench.
Yeah. They'll. I hope they send that $5. As we close down on Mark, there's a convergence here with him and Mrs. Selvig at the end. And I don't know that I realized how much time he spent with Mrs. Selvig in the outside world. When he confronts her in the driveway, he's like, I spent 2 years with you and, like, suffered. So she was there, I guess, to be of comfort to him after his wife died. And I got the sense that there was a deeper relationship there than Miss Selvig just being the weird neighbor that gave him cookies. Did
I don't know.
get that?
I was going to ask you because actually you more recently watched the second season. I can't remember their dynamic. I thought it was more just she was the kooky neighbor that got more involved in his life kind of during the season, but it made it seem like they were in some form or fashion friends for the last 2 years and seeming very conflicted with each other.
Yeah. So the sense I got from season 1 is that she was kind of the annoying neighbor, a kind of nuisance, but he did introduce her to his sister as a lactation consultant. And so I think the show played it like he was kind of annoyed with her, like with the trash cans and some other things. But in this moment, he seems to think that there is a stronger bond there where he has confided in her. That's how I read this and how betrayed he feels. That she's now just leaving and she knows both his innie and his outie. And this leads to the $1 million question where he says, you're just going to leave. Do you know something about Gemma? And the camera sits on Mrs. Selvig's face for conservatively 10 minutes. And then she screams and tries to run him over with not a Volvo, Tom. If it would have been a Volvo, she would have got him. But this was a car that misses. So I don't know where Mrs. Selvig is going. I do know she will come back and I believe play an important role, even though the episode is called Goodbye, Mrs. Selvig. I think there's going to be an episode that goes, Hello, Miss Selvig.
I mean, this is why I still have a lot of questions about her as a character and what her motivations are. Because if she's clearly full bore Kier and for Lumen, why would she hesitate here? Yet she does. So she just shows that she is conflicted and may reveal something to Mark later on, but now's not the time.
Yeah, I think she's out on Kier. I just don't think she's ready. Maybe she signed a non-disclosure agreement, Tom. She doesn't want to get sued, I don't know. But we'll find out eventually, hopefully, in season 7. We don't get a lot of them, but we do get Irv, whose name on the outside is Mr. Bailiff, which it would have been great had he been a bailiff, and then they called him Mr. Bailiff. But he gets fired. The one key point with him is he makes a phone call, Irv does, and he says, I want you to know my innie got the message. And while he's talking on this payphone, which, Tom, I've got questions about payphones, and maybe that's to your point where all these cars seem older. Why are there payphones? I guess there's not cell phones. I don't know. But Bird is watching him, and it's Christopher Walken. And I don't know if Christopher Walken's going to murder him. I don't know if Christopher Walken's going to fall in love with him. I don't know if Christopher Walken is just mad because he's waiting for the payphone as well, and it's cold outside. But I found this little moment fascinating. Did I get that message right that he said, I want you to know my innie got the message?
I didn't hear it because it was wildly quiet during the scene. So I'm assuming you had captions on. Did you?
Always, Tom.
Caption?
Always. Okay. I read all these shows. I don't listen.
So I think, I don't think the general audience was not necessarily not supposed to know this because clearly it's in the captions, but it wasn't said loudly for us to hear it. It was just more of he was making a call. You don't really know what's going on. And then Bird watching. It is great to have Christopher Walken back. I wasn't sure if they were going to do much more with him, but I am still didn't Irv? He clicked off of his protocol or operation, or whatever. Like when they flipped the switch while he was banging on Bert's door, right? So there still probably was an interaction between Irv and Bert that we haven't gotten yet, right?
I can't guess at what we have not seen. We do get a flashback of him banging on the door, and I guess that is where he cut back. So, yes, but I don't know if they actually talked. It'll be interesting.
I'm sure we'll get that. Yeah, I'm sure we'll get it at some point, because otherwise, why would Bert be here following him?
Right.
Something had to have been said at that door, which we'll get later, because I love their relationship in the first season.
I agree. We have Dylan. Dylan got fired. Dylan seemed to be very sad about getting fired. This leads to Dylan interviewing. I do want to mention that his first motivation when he got fired is, what am I going to tell my wife? I believe his wife's name is Gretchen. And he ends up interviewing at Great Doors. And I loved this moment because during the interview, he asks about benefits, which, Tom, first interview, don't open with that. Just my advice. Second is don't say something like, I've loved doors my whole life. No one's passionate about doors. Just, it seems insincere and weird. I would love to coach Dylan on interviewing because he's making some common mistakes here, but it led to some great comedy.
I loved it. So first off, the company name being Great Doors just reminded me of like a Ron Swanson company. That seems like what he would call a door company. And then I had a lot of like Monsters Inc. vibes with all these doors like kind of going in the background back and forth. I thought was lovely. But I loved the way it was shot where like the interviewee, the interviewer are like the same character and going back and forth and having a good little rapport. But then the second he mentions that he was severed, he like says it's like severed discrimination. Like he won't hire him and he thinks it's terrible for what he did. It was a pretty fun little scene.
I don't know that I recognize the guy's reaction as to why being severed is such a negative thing. He says something like, I need one whole person, not two people.
Yeah.
Which is not really great. I think if you can pay one person but you get two people, that's just good like management and resource usage, right?
Mm-hmm.
I did think it would be tough during an interview where they're like, oh, tell us what you did at Lumen. And you're like, I was a severed employee. And they're like, oh, what did you do there? And you're like, I have no idea. And they're like, you were there for 7 years. Yeah, don't remember. There was an elevator and that's about it. We checked our badge. I think that would be, tough. But you could also be like, you could just make up what you did. You'd be like, oh, I was an astrophysicist there. I created a lot of cool stuff. So that's why I should be the director of NASA. And then they give you the job, and then NASA collapses because you are wholly unprepared. But both Irv and Dylan, as we know, get rehired, which is wonderful because the gang's back together. And I feel like you could take episode 1 of this and episode 2, and if you like put them together and you had the intercuts like we normally would, they're almost one giant episode, but they separate it by outies and innies, and I liked how they did that with these first 2 episodes.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it was a real fun start to the season, and I'm excited for some more. A couple little just kind of notes I was thinking about as we watched this episode. I thought there was some cool, just more interesting plays of like color and separation. Like I think we're in their Mark's apartment, you can see those 2 fish he has, and the fish are like clearly have like a wall between them, and like one is red and one is blue. I thought it was interesting. You have like the clocks that they kept kind of featuring when all the characters were going back down into the offices, where it was like a digital clock and it was like saying specific time frames, and then all the clocks we've seen in the office log. I just think that's a fun little like detail of the differences between kind of the outie world and the innie world. And one thing we didn't mention at the end of the last episode, which was like that really quick cut when they were the gang's back together, they're going back to their computers, they're working the machines. As Mark is like doing the machines, he sees like some quick flash cuts of Gemma. So again, that kind of goes back to my theory of like maybe what they're doing in macro data refinement is like rebuilding of a consciousness, whether it's Kier or whether it's Gemma. But I thought that was very interesting. We didn't clock in the first episode that I wanted to make sure we brought up.
Huh. Wow. That's a deep theory, and one that I'm going to struggle to comprehend in my small peanutted brain, but I appreciate you bringing the big brain stuff to this conversation.
You remember that though in the first episode, right? Like at the very end, we get that quick little flash of Gemma, and it's like almost like there's like her face is on the top side. There's almost like vitals on the screen, and it seems to have the same kind of like buckets that they're categorizing these numbers in. It's quite fascinating, and as is tradition, right? There were words on the screen. I paused it and looked at it a little bit.
Smart. Please bring me more of that smart next episode. We will be back for episode 3. We appreciate all of you joining us. We were recently told that listening to us is like listening to 2 close friends talk, and the audience is the third wheel. And this is the moment where we'd like to give you, the third wheel, a chance to interact with 2 old friends. So we'll play 5 minutes of silence, and you can just talk to whatever you're listening to us on. Or you can reach us at teambingepodcast@gmail.com. Tom has the social media stuff. We find that social media is a safe space where everything goes right and it's not a dumpster fire, so you can reach us there. Tom, what did I miss?
Yeah, follow us on the socials of your choice. We're on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, Threads. Join the conversation there at Team Binge or at Team Binge Podcast. I did, after just being on socials for like a week on this show, there's so much like online fun stuff with this show where I think you can go to like lumen-industries.com and they have like the computer game with all the numbers that are kind of moving around and you can bucketize them. And then it gives you this like weird cryptic message. It's just fun. Like, I'm all for a show that does this extra marketing online. I remember a show that did that really well was Mr. Robot, for those people that kind of did those deep dives. And I love that the show is doing this too. So follow us online. Let us know what you think about the show, and excited for more, man. This is a fun one.
I agree. For Team Binge, I have been Julian.
And I am heading down the elevator. Good night, everybody.